Okay. All right. Let's do
Let's,
tri-types.
all right.
All right, Tannah, how's
Great.
it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm tired again. That's just going to be
Yeah.
the theme until after this race is over. I'm just going to be tired all the time. It's fine.
I
Yeah.
don't think I'm tired. I think I'm scattered right now. I'm very
Oh, interesting.
scattered.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also didn't get a call with Brandon this week because things were just very chaotic. So that's probably why. I
I have come to depend on those calls maybe more than I should
it
to
just like
like get
helps
my
me.
life back together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just helps me
Yep.
get things back in order of
Yeah.
priority, where
Hmm.
I've noticed with him and the work that I'm doing is like this fight or flight stuff and being present, da da da, right? And
Yeah.
my stress levels are so much higher because I don't take a beat to be like, what is actually a level 10?
It's all level 10, all of
Level
it.
levels are at midnight, everything. Everything's
Yeah.
birth.
All right. We will get past that someday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think we
Until
will.
then, it's just job security for Brandon. And but I'm here,
Cool.
Enneagram adventuring on this Sunday
Yes.
afternoon.
If you're new here and you haven't heard us talk about Brandon before, Brandon's performance and life coach that both Tannah and I work with. So we reference him often. But then why else should you care about listening to us? That's a very good question. Tannah and I are both IEQ9 certified coaches with that tool to use for coaching, team development, personal development, self awareness, all that stuff. If you've never heard of the Enneagram before, I'd be shocked, but it is possible. And so today we're going to talk about another structure within the Enneagram as a system. The Enneagram is a archetypal personality assessment, similar to Myers-Briggs, DISC, Berkman, the Big Five, Strengths Finder, right? There's a million of them. Similar in that it is a personality assessment. What makes it different is that it's really all about motivation as opposed to just behavior. And it's also really nuanced. And we talk a little bit about the nuances and that. And we're going to dive into one of the things that makes it very, very nuanced today. Am I missing anything else you want to say about the basics or about why anybody should care about listening?
I think that if you've never heard of the Enneagram and you somehow we landed on your algorithm, the sign, take it as such, take a minute to understand your core motivation rather than the behaviors you're exhibiting. And if there is any room for you in your mental capacity at this time to do some hard, uncomfortable work, here we are doing all of that. So I would say the incentive is to be uncomfortable to be better on the other side of that and grow along with everybody listening and both Holly and I.
Perfect. Okay. So today we're going to talk tri-types, which we have mentioned in prior podcasts as we've talked about numbers, how Tannah and I can relate to other numbers on the Enneagram based on our tri-type. So we're going to do a deep dive into that. To set that up, I think it's important that we remind everyone that the Enneagram, so the 9 numbers that fall on the Enneagram are set into 3 groups. One is the heart-centered group, one is the head-centered group, and one is what they would call the gut-centered or action-centered group. Those those numbers fall into those, and your tri-type is your highest scoring number in each of those centers. So just a reminder, heart-centered numbers are 2, 3, 4. Head-centered numbers are 5, 6, 7. Gut-centered numbers are 8, 9, 1. Anything you want to add to that before we go on?
One thing that I would add is if you're thinking about head, heart, guts, the translation of that for the topic we're on today is thinks like, acts like, feels like. That's an easier way for me to remember them. I don't know why. Heart center meaning feels like, thinking obvious, and acts like.
Yep.
So
Acts like.
that's how I remember them. That's how they show up
Yes.
on your, if you were to do an IEQ 9 assessment through with the Enneagram, that's how it would show up on your coaching companion for us. I
Yes.
personally find a ton of help in understanding that I am more than a number within the nine numbers with tri-type. I think it was a
Yes.
big unlock for me when
Yeah,
I understood it.
I agree. There's a lot of things in tri-type where it helps, just like subtypes that we talked about last week, but it helps kind of create that nuance to be like, oh, yep, I resonate with this even more because yes, I think like that, or yes, I act like that, or feel like that. And it also helps create language around that. Knowing the tri-type helps create language around this is how I feel, this is how I think, this is how I act. So the just like Tana mentioned, the tri-type, the idea is very, very high level is that you think like the number in your thinking center, you act like the number in the action center, and you feel like the number in your feeling center where you scored the highest. That's like the high level way to think about it. What I would add additionally to that sort of thing is that it does not change your core number. So it's important to keep in mind as we go through this because we're going to talk about behaviors, we're going to talk about feelings, but that does not change the core number motivation. So I just to use myself as an example, and then Tana can use herself as an example. I am a five. So because I am a five, I think like a five, but I feel like a four and I act like a nine. So as I am out in the world, like doing my thing, my core motivation continues to be that of the five. So it continues to be I'm gathering information, I'm trying to solve my anxiety by knowing lots of things, kind of eternally curious and always trying to like pick up little bits of knowledge, remember obscure facts to keep myself safe. That continues to be the core motivation, even though when I have feelings, I feel like a four. And when I take actions, I act like a nine.
So I am a two. So I feel like a two. Similar to Holly's five, she thinks like a five. I am a two that feels like a two. I act like a one. So the strict perfectionist. And I think like a six. So loyal skeptic. So none of any of that changes that my motivation is to be helpful and I find value in relationships in how I'm serving other people and making their lives easier. So even though I'm a acts like a one, for me that shows up in needing to accomplish a list before I'm rewarded with something, as an example. So that's my acts like a one. And my thinks like a six is thinking about, the worst case scenario. So being prepared for worst case and being highly skeptical of all of the possible things that could happen in any given situation. The best way that I can describe that, and I just noticed that I do this, is I carry a little mini first aid kit wherever I go with my children specifically. So it's in the bag that like the snacks are in and everything. Because I'm prepared with a band-aid, I'm prepared with children's ibuprofen, I'm prepared. So that's how it shows up for me, but none of that changes any of my core motivation of wanting to be helpful to other people. If anything, it doubles down in both of those areas.
Within tri-type, the idea and like the importance in sort of learning this or understanding this is again, we're just building self-awareness. And I touched on it briefly when we talked about interaction style last week with the withdrawing numbers. And I happen to, in my tri-type, be all three withdrawing numbers. Because within each center, one number is compliant, one number is withdrawing, and one number is assertive. Just luck of the draw. I am all three withdrawing. But I think the biggest unlock for me in tri-type was not learning that all three were withdrawing. That made sense to me. It was disappointing to me. I was upset by it, but that wasn't the biggest thing. The biggest thing was oh yeah, like I have a lot of feelings, like a four. I feel a lot of things, but I cover them with my fiveness. And I will even tell people I'm not a high feeling person. That's a lie. There's still lots of feelings. I just cover them up with logic in my fiveness. I think that was one of the big things to be like, oh, yeah, that fourness does really exist for me, both as a wing and as a feels like. It's also very internal. So that's another reason why it's easy for me to cover it. Four feelings are internal and they have a lot of them, and some of them we'll talk about them more than others, but it's an internal experience. The other thing that it explained a lot about is that I can be a very busy person. And we talked about this when we talked about nines. Nines can be very busy people, not always well prioritized or not always taking right action. That could be a thing for me. There's also a pretty strong procrastination piece that can exist with nines. I got that for sure. For sure got that behavior.
I think my unlock in my relationship with you, learning your tri-type, was your feels like a four. Because, like, initially, when I would get into these moments with you where I'm like, that's a really big feeling. And she's a five. I
Yeah.
get it. And I was like, I don't read that she wings four. What's happening? So when you told me your tri-type, it was this like aha moment for me. Because I think like while it's internal, I think with you, like when you feel like really safe and in a positive energy space with the person that you're talking to, you will let that go. Like you'll have the
Yeah.
feeling externally. What I needed to learn in my interaction with you is like, I'm not going to fix that.
Nope.
I'm going to sit here and I'm going to hold on to that wanting to fix it as tightly as I possibly can. And the way that it shows up then is after about a minute and a half of me sitting there, I'll say, what do you need from me? And you're like,
Sometimes
nothing.
nothing.
You're
Yeah,
like, nothing.
nothing.
Why?
I think the other thing that's the feels like a four is that we're gonna have to talk lines next. That was the other one. But on my line, when I move to eight, there's like an anger thing that can come out.
Yeah.
So that's like a primary feeling for me, can be getting angry about things. But then the other one is sadness, which is very four feeling,
Yeah.
right? Like something will feel very sad to me. And I can get in that like dark, twisty four space.
Well, it's a good call on lines because similar to tri-type, I often see myself showing up on the low side of six, as an example. My thinks like can like take over and I can show
Hmm.
up on the low side of that. So it doesn't always read like my stress number. It
Right.
reads like anxious six energy. I think my biggest unlock for me was around that anxiety piece. It was probably in my six that because one is easier for me to reconcile with. Like it's tactical things that I do. But with my six, it feels really anxious and it's like body feelings of anxious because it's so much. And it's a huge lack of trust in some people. It's like I have that loyalty piece in that number of like fool me once, like there is no fool me twice. I've been given that feedback before where if I see someone behaving in a certain way that like I don't like the way they're moving, they're very quickly voted off my proverbial island. Not wrong.
Yeah. Thinks like a six, that I mean, some of that can be, there's a couple things in the sync thinks like a six that I see come through in you. One, we talked about sixes, but it's the chaining.
Oh
It's the
yeah.
latching of things together that maybe doesn't belong together. All the things are true. It's just that they don't necessarily mean something altogether.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So that's one. And then there is an element, the worst case scenario definitely comes through for you. I've, we've talked about this before, but I'll even text you and be like, okay, thinks like a six. Like, got it.
It's definitely a piece that I needed more awareness of because I think that I truly thought that it was like medical grade anxiety, like
Sure.
legitimate. But it got so much better after I knew about it and when I worked with Brandon on like where that comes from.
Well,
So,
the awareness piece is super key to all of this work.
yeah,
So the Enneagram can bring you this awareness that you just didn't have before. I would have never had the language to even talk about, like, oh, the feels like a four, like, oh, that's like deep, heavy sadness. I wouldn't have been able to probably even articulate that well before. So I just that awareness is a huge, huge piece. And then just to keep calling out Brandon, the going back to the source of that, that's the other piece. That's the other part of the work.
1,000%. I think for me, I've tried multiple medications for anxiety prior to my work with Brandon. None of them made me feel like normal. I always had significant enough side effects, then I would have to try to change the medication that I was on. And medication makes sense for many people. It just doesn't make sense for me. And once I started working with Brandon on where that stuff came from, it was fine. Like I could manage it, I could understand it differently. I could sit with it differently. And I think the sitting with it was the part that I just simply couldn't do because it would give me, like I mentioned before, like body feelings of anxiety.
Mhm.
And I didn't know how to cope with that besides trying to act like a one and control everything in my life, even the things I can't control or the people I can't control, as an example. But I think the incentive in it around Enneagram and partnership with the work with Brandon for me was that I didn't have to play around with, is that one going to work or is this going to work or am I working out at the wrong time of day? All of it wasn't that complicated. It was,
Yeah.
I needed to figure out where it came from and be able to understand how to sit with it.
Well, I think we've talked a little bit about both of our tri-types. And if I think about somebody else who's looking at that and like, oh man, how do I figure that out? One, if you've taken the IQ 9 through an IQ 9 certified coach, you can get the secondary report called the Coaching Companion, which will spell it out for you. And the coach that's associated with that can help you. There are other assessments, though, that are maybe less expensive where you can get the information similarly. So
Sure.
the Ready will give you a like readout of how you scored across all 9 types. And then the way that you would find the tri-type, like we described before, is that you would look in the feeling centered numbers and it's your highest score in the feeling centered numbers. You then look in your head centered numbers, highest score there, gut or action centered numbers, highest score there. So you can find that in other assessments if they give you how you scored across all 9 numbers. If
Yeah.
the assessment that you took doesn't have that, it may not be as easy for you to just point to a report to get it, in which case, you could reach out and talk with someone about how to figure it out. Or Tana and I are also always willing, if you wanted to reach out and get an IQ 9, we could figure out how to do that
Yeah.
as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's how you would figure that out
Hmm.
from an assessment. The other thing I like to talk about when we talk tri-type with people is that we mentioned this when we talked about subtypes like last week, that subtypes takes the 9 types to 27 distinctly different ways of being in the world. When you factor in tri-type, it turns into 108 possibilities. So that's like very wide and very broad, which is one of the reasons that I personally love the Enneagram, is that it's not just putting you into this single way of being. I'm going to knock disc here for just a second. I recently was at a thing where there was like a disc certified person, and every person I'm biased. Of course, I love the Enneagram. This person also is biased, loves disc. But as you're going through it, and there's like 4 things within disc, there's just not a ton of overlap there or like nuance in that. There's a little bit because I think there's a little bit in all of them, but it isn't as broad. It doesn't give you as broad of a picture as the
Mhm.
Enneagram does.
Yeah, I think it goes back to like what if you listen through all of the episodes when we went over each number and you get to know each number, you once you know someone's tri-type, it just makes it so much more clear. And we're going to answer one of the questions that we've gotten later on where, how do you use this in your everyday life? And I personally think that doing an assessment where you get an accurate picture of your tri-type is how you truly accurately use the Enneagram. I think this is one of my favorite topics because of how much clarity it gives. Because to Holly's point, I know multiple fives. Every five I know shows up differently. Every two I know shows up differently. Every nine I know shows up differently. It's not about your behaviors, but the tri-type helps you understand where some of those behaviors are coming from, what
Yeah.
kind of energy is behind them.
Yeah, I think that's, and we touch on it as we've gone through some of the numbers, right? Where we mentioned it last week, where there's a 1 to 1 8. Well, I know that 1 to 1 8 feels like a 4. It kind of confirms some things,
Yeah.
or every, when I think about it in terms of other friends that we have, right? We have another friend who's a 2. She's also a thinks like a 6.
Yep.
And so sometimes when that pattern shows up, it's just it gives me a greater understanding of her and what she's needing in the moment as we're going through whatever the thought process is. And then the two feelings associated with the thoughts.
My husband is an 8 that feels like a 3, which for those of you who don't recall or maybe don't know a 3, feeling minimal and thinks like a 6. He reads pretty angry most of the time. And he's a social 8, right? But because he's a social 8 that feels like a 3, he's a really good leader. He's a person
Yeah.
that people look to. And that made a lot more sense for me after I learned his tri-type.
And the feels like a 3 is, that behavior that they have of feelings are inefficient.
Mhm.
And they're going to set those feelings aside and set those feelings aside and set those feelings aside, or try to numb those feelings. Most of the folks that I know that are feels like 3, that is common behavior for them. In the that, yep, I'm just going to ignore it. I don't have time for it. I know a few folks who are, so we talked about, you and I are both all withdrawing or all compliant numbers in our tri-type. I know a few folks that are all assertive. So that'd be 3, 7, and 8. So that'd
Yep.
be feels like a 3, thinks like a 7, acts like an 8. And a lot of them are in leadership positions, right? This thinks like a 7 is this positive outlook. We're going to be fine. We're going to be great. I can be the cheerleader kind of way of thinking. And then the acts like an 8, this assertive, we're going to get it done, go getter, all of that. And then the
Yeah.
feels like a 3, it just like it doubles down on those things, because the other thing about those other two assertive numbers, 7s, if you remember, only like the happy half of feeling. And so that's that positive outlook. 8s are, while they have feelings, they wrap them all up under a protective, hard shell. And then you've got the assertive 3 also, that's like feelings are inefficient. I don't got time for feelings.
Mhm.
So in that tri type, while they can be amazing leaders, they can also have a really hard time in the emotional space.
Oh, yeah, that's why I mean, he even chose a job where feelings are you can't have first
Yeah.
responder, so he's not having feelings in the moment, nor is he unpacking them after the fact. That's the work.
Don't bury,
That's
like
right.
it, you need to feel it.
Yeah.
Go ahead with it.
Yep. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, but very, very helpful from a marital perspective for me to understand that for him because here I am with all my feelings and my warm fuzzies, and I'm like, "Where'd yours go? Where are they? Are they under? Are they under there somewhere?"
They're all covered up with the 3-ness and the 8-ness. Yeah.
As soon
Yeah.
as I got his tribe type, I was like, "Oh man, are you okay?" He's like, "What do you mean? Am I okay?"
I don't know any other way to be in the world. Yeah.
I was like, oh, your tri-type is this. And he's like, I have no idea what that means. I'm like, are feelings hard? He's like what? Like just immediately annoyed.
Oh man.
You need a hug? Bring it in. Come here. He's like, Knuckles,
Yeah.
this bump.
No hugging. Yes.
Oh, okay.
I can get in that. Yeah.
Well, you're in that boat. One of the favorite things that you've ever said to me is, "Do you want to hug? Do you want to hug me about it?"
You heard about it?
Yeah,
Yes.
I do.
I will say that I think we talked about this a little bit in the five episode, but the guy who started the IQ9 as a five, but he tells this story when he talks kind of about his journey with the Enneagram and his challenges or whatever. The hugging thing made me think of this. So I'm not going like totally down a rabbit hole, but a little bit. But at the same time that he was doing all this work developing the IQ9 and studying the Enneagram with Claudio, I'll mess up his name, Navarro, who was like
Oh,
one of
yeah.
the like
Yep.
considered like a founding kind of person in the Enneagram work. So he was studying with him. He was also reading this book called A Course in Miracles. And he had this realization within his fiveness that to overcome it, he needed to not avoid physical connection to other people. And so he actually would go out of his way to ask people for hugs because of his own discomfort with it, because of his sort of own issue and him knowing that he needed to like
Yeah.
work into those feelings and all of that. Yeah.
It speaks to my soul. I
Maybe
love
someday
hugs.
I'll get there. Yeah.
I love
Maybe
hugs.
someday I'll be like, "Oh, we're gonna make it like a daily practice." I don't know.
Hey, I won't laugh.
Okay. All right. What else do we want to talk about for tri-types?
I want to call out one more thing about tri-type in the tie to work with your ego. So,
Oh, yes.
ego, how Holly and I kind of teach around ego in conversation is that it's meant as a protection mechanism. Over time, human beings have evolved where now our ego is protecting us from mostly emotional driven things that happen to us in a day to day, where we develop systems of protection or rationalization for ourselves. So, the way that tri type is really helpful if you are doing any work around ego is it helps challenge you in some of the ways that you think and behave to better get to know why you do the certain things that you do. And my call out would be exploration around tri type to be able to work through some of the ego driven behaviors that you can find in any person in day to day. Ego is a thing that I will work on forever. I'll never have it mastered completely. But it's almost this, I don't know about you, but also in this work with Brandon, it's kind of like this feeling of like you're giving up that energy that you're using towards protecting yourself in those ways. It's kind of like this way of extreme ownership freeing of like, I'm going to call the things that I'm working on the things that I'm working on, and they become far less scary. So they
I
become
agree.
like the monster under the bed,
Yeah.
where you're like, I'm
Yeah.
working on not being a total asshole when someone doesn't like my idea. Like, my way is the right way, obviously. And it's calling that out to be like, I'm bad at that makes it far less intimidating and
Yeah.
easier to work through. And tri-type is huge for me in that.
I think, yeah, around ego, a lot of self-awareness work.
Hmm.
There's the deep emotional work that we do with Brandon, but also in like the self-awareness space, there's a lot there to as you truly become aware, that is a letting go of the ego. It's the acceptance of like, shit, yes, I do that. I do that. And that sucks. and I need to be better. And now I know better, I can try to be better, but it's the acknowledgement of that, the awareness of that, and then the not letting your ego come in and be like, "Yeah, but it's not that bad." Or, "No, you don't. You don't do that." I
Yeah.
definitely notice that in conversations sometimes with folks where you'll be talking with them and you can tell, right, when you've tripped up their ego on something where they're not self-aware.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah. For those people who haven't started this work, if there is anything additionally enticing for you to do that, it is the ability to see when other people are doing that and not being so triggered.
yeah. Oh,
And
it's not personal.
it's
Yeah.
not it's not personal. And I was gonna say one more thing about, oh, my ick in that was when I first realized the ties to my tri-type and my number and the appeal to authority. I think I came to you and I was like, "Oh my God, teacher's pet much?" I
Mhm.
still do that to this day. I'm like, "Please like me. You're an authority. Please like me. I'll do anything."
Yeah, yeah, and you have it, like, on a bunch of fronts in
Oh,
your
it's
Enneagram, like
bad.
yeah,
It's so
yeah,
bad. I'm doing the work with Brandon to understand where that comes from, so I have less ick about it. I wouldn't say I'm any better about it at this point. I'm getting less ick about it because it is worth
yeah.
it, and I know when I'm doing it now, and sometimes it
Well,
gives
and
me
that
so much then I stop doing it, but
well, and that's, like, the first thing, again, to, like, come back to the awareness part is like, "Oh, there it is again. Yep, there's that pattern, there's that thought, there's that whatever it is." For me, 'cause you have it through being a tri-type with all 3 compliant
mhm.
numbers, plus social 2, plus things like a 6, right? Like, it's
Plus
coming
second
at you
highest
from,
number
like
being 3.
you got it coming from everywhere.
It's
I
everywhere.
have a similar issue, but it's on the withdraw it's stay in the room. Something could be happening, and withdrawing numbers should develop awareness around this, where I could be in the room and not actually be in the room. Be on the call, but I'm not actually on the call. I have, like, retreated into my head, into some other place, into some other anything to get out of that.
Mhm.
And so sometimes if something's getting really uncomfortable, or if I said something and it shut down the room, because that happens sometimes, I will, like, think to myself, "Stay in the room. Stay in the room. Don't leave. Stay in the room."
Can I just say I
Yeah.
personally love it when you say a thing that shuts down the room because I know you so well, I know exactly what's going on, and I'm like, "This is good. This is healthy."
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's one of those where I go, "Okay, damn."
Sometimes when you're in the room, if I've shut down the room, I'll be like, "Hey, Tannah, you wanna help me with this?"
Yeah, you'll be like, "Right?" I'll be like, "Hell yeah. What she said. She's not wrong, folks."
Yeah. Yeah.
I enjoy
But
it.
it could be very easy for me to just be like, "Didn't land," right? And just, like, just go back into my head and
But
ignore anything else that happens after that.
like, I've never you just have so many valuable things to say. You're this 5 that's filled with, like, really valuable knowledge. You never say something just to say something, you know what I mean? It's not it's not this energy of, like, I'm gonna put this little bomb in the room and I'm just gonna it's always valuable. It's a moment that needs to happen.
Yes, I can see that, but it doesn't necessarily make my instinct to, like, retreat go away. That's the work do often is, like, show up, be seen, use your voice.
Yep,
Don't leave the room.
yep.
Like, show up, be seen, use your voice, don't leave the room. Like, okay, what is there anything we wanna wrap up on for tri-type?
I don't think
I'll be
so.
excited again, we keep talking about this, but I'll be excited again to have some folks come on the podcast where we can kinda unpack their tri-type a little bit and
Yeah.
talk about that more.
I would say that's a really good point for a message us if you're interested because we can really start with any number of those. You know what I
Correct.
mean? We don't need to
Yeah.
jump in at ones. We don't need to jump in at two. Like if you're eager and you're excited about this, we want to hear from you. So just message us, DM us, text us, have our numbers
Yeah.
because
If
we
you've taken the
want
IEQ 9, even better, because
even
then
better.
we can unpack your IEQ 9 with you.
Yep. Otherwise, I think that's all I would say on tri-type, but want to leave some space to answer a question that we got.
Yeah. Yeah. So, friend of the podcast, friend of mine in real life, Maggie messaged me recently. And I do want to give her a shout out on here because I know she listens. And she was asking about how to use the Enneagram in just your day to day life. Like, now you know this, now you're working on your self awareness. Now what? How do we use this? And so I wanted to take some time. We've talked a lot about awareness today to talk more about that. That's the main place I would say that I use it in my day to day life is a recognition tool and for awareness. There's more. There's more than that. It's not just that simple. But Tannah, how would you say that you use it in your day to day before I jump in?
I use it a lot in my day to day. I would say, first and foremost, with myself, in terms of if I am struggling particularly in a day, I dive into what feelings I'm having, what behaviors are coming as a result, and do a little bit of searching within those numbers that feel most at the surface and try to challenge that in a healthier way and show up differently. So that's mostly how I use it in a day to day. The other, I guess, the other thing that I do use it for is obviously I have a job outside of this. And what I do in any given day, while I know we don't talk about that on here, is I help, serve people. I'm within an HR function. So for me, knowing that I'm a two and oftentimes feelings get adopted by me, it's how do I challenge the people around me and the people that I serve every day to be better, do better, be engaged, feel fulfilled without it becoming my own. So it's that boundary work within that. I would also say that I use it in understanding my relationships. For the people that are closest to me, I know most of their numbers, which is really helpful in navigating just day to day, but also tricky situations that come up for those people in my life. And it makes me feel more well rounded, more fulfilled by those relationships because they're deeper. It feels deeper because I understand that. First and foremost, though, like I said, just to challenge myself in the way that I'm showing up.
I agree with all those things. I think the relationship piece is key in how I use the Enneagram. If I know someone's Enneagram type, close friend or not, it could be someone that I'm not as close with that I just happen to know because I've done Enneagram work with them or whatever.
Sure.
I have a different level of compassion. It makes it easier for me sometimes to set aside judgment when I know a little bit about their Enneagram
Mm-hmm.
because there we mentioned this earlier about how things aren't personal, but the Enneagram sometimes as behaviors are showing up in someone and they're like making me like want to put on like my judgy hat and be like, that's fucking annoying or whatever the thing
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
For me to be able to be like, oh wait, but they're whatever number, that's a stress behavior that's coming out. This isn't about me.
Right.
This isn't about me.
Yep.
And so it gives me a different ability to have compassion for situations that people are going through. It
Mm-hmm.
also gives me ideas around, okay, if we're going to go down this path with somebody, whatever it is, we're going to give them tough feedback, we're going to have a tough conversation. If I know their Enneagram, and if I also, we haven't talked about conflict style yet, we will,
Yep.
but if I also know their conflict style, it helps me prepare for that conversation or giving that feedback because I'm thinking about, okay, they're reactive, or okay, their positive outlook. And what does that mean then in this conversation? So I think this might sound like a lot that you have to know all this stuff, you have to know a lot. But I think the biggest takeaway is even if you don't know all of those things, how do you walk around in the world and go, there are 108 different ways of being within the Enneagram system. Every person is nuanced, has grown up with different experiences, challenges, traumas, whatever it is. And how do we just have compassion for that by looking at this tool and being like, this is so broad. I couldn't understand what life is like in that person's shoes. How do I have compassion for that?
I thought of one more way that I use it daily too, Holly, because everything you said is true. What made me, the word compassion that you said made me think of it. A parent, I find it incredibly useful for me to be more well-rounded with my kids and hopefully offering a really healthy parent-child relationship that allows for me to be really supportive of them, but also challenging them to understand others and hold space for people and be good humans that go out into the world, not just thinking about themselves, but thinking about how they show up with other people and be part of the greater good, right? I talk to Holly about things all the time related to my kids because I'm actively curious about what numbers they will end up being. But I think it also helps me challenge their environments where I can give that brief example of the bus. Now, Keegan, I think I shared this on a couple of podcasts, but we wrote a letter to our bus driver because we were not making good bus choices, switching seats to being all silly, doing all kinds of funny things. So I got another call last week that he was back to funny business. So I get on a call with Dean of Students. I'm like, okay, this is helpful. Can you send me the video? And she's like, legally, I can't do that. I'm like, okay, well, tell me about what happened so we can talk about it, right? So I go through my whole thing of, okay, if he doesn't tell me when I pick him up, we got a bigger problem, right? Of course, he tells on himself the second he gets in my car at pickup. He's like, I was bad on the bus again. He's like, can we talk about it? Can we talk about it right now? And I'm like, no, I'm not ready to talk about it. I'm pissed. It's like, I'm not ready to talk about it. He's like, yeah, but I want to talk about it right now. But anyway, to keep a long story short, they put this of, they put this bag in his backpack, Ziploc bag that has like, oh, this is how I will be on the bus, right? With little check marks of, I'm not going to switch seats. I'm going to have a 0 to 1 level voice. I'm going to, all these things. And then he says, oh, Mom, I got this bag. So he brings it out. I'm looking at it. In it is like a brand new book of stickers, a little Etch-a-Sketch thing, like all these new toys. And my first thought was like, well, what the fuck? Like, here I am being super hard on him, and then he gets a bag of new toys. So the conversation that I had with my sister being one person, I was like, does this feel like a reward? Because it feels like a reward.
Well, that's when you first told me about it. That's what I said. I was like,
Yeah,
wait, are they rewarding?
we're rewarding this bad behavior. So I emailed the dean of students back, and I was like, hey, so the bag, no thank you. He's gonna learn how to occupy himself in a respectful way and not distract himself from making a poor choice. Like, that's not real. That's not solving the problem. That's like, how am I going to be entertained to not be naughty? There's some times in life where you're not going to be entertained. You're going to be bored. And if you find that out now and you come to cope with that now, life will be easier for you.
Correct.
So I say it because, one, I feel like I always say some sort of silly story about my kids, but it does help me be balanced from the standpoint of like, while not a harsh form of punishment, right? It is different than what's programmatically being shared as an expectation. And had I not done like this deep dive into Enneagram, I probably would have been more apt to be like, oh, well, I guess that's how they do
Right.
this now, right? I feel much better about being like, no, I don't agree with that. Here's what we're gonna do. You're not gonna be a little butthead on the bus. So screen time is on a drought currently, and we are surviving, not thriving. That's a punishment for me, by the way.
Yeah.
Taking away screen, I feel like that's punishment for me.
So interesting. There's many things about the younger generation. So like alpha and beta. I think we determined your kids are probably beta
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
But there's things where I'm like, oh, they're in this generation of parents that are doing a lot of deep work that are trying to like be better, more emotionally aware parents. I'm so curious how that will impact things. And then the other side is we're like creating all these bad habits and then like here, just be distracted. Don't be bored. Just occupy yourself. It's like this, it's the everything that we're trying to overcome now as we're all addicted to our phones and
Yeah.
everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. But growing up, we didn't have that. I can remember as a kid, and I'm enough older than you. I'm an elder millennial. But maybe you have some of this too, where it was like some of those distracting kind of things weren't an option, where you literally had to go and like make it up on your own. So there, I think about it with my brothers. They used to go play like one of them really wanted to be a paleontologist, and he would go play paleontologist. No, I grew up on a farm, so to be fair,
Yeah.
we had the option to
Yeah.
like make really big messes. But he and a friend of his took tile from somebody else's house tile, like the scrappy tile pieces, and they drew like, you know,
Oh, like bones or
hieroglyphics
something.
or like
Yeah.
on the tile, and then they broke the tile, and then they buried the tile, and then they dug the tile up, buried it, dug it back up, and then put it back together. This was like how they
Amazing.
entertained themselves.
Amazing.
Yes, right?
Amazing.
Uh, so that's the side that I wonder about the younger generation today, where it's like the iPad, the whatever, will they have those kind of moments? Or how in the world do you facilitate a moment like that?
I know
Yeah.
where it has to be super intentional. Like even today, so we went to Costco today and they were like, "Oh, can we get something? Can we get something? Can we get something?" And I'm like, I don't know. There was a million people at Costco on a Sunday
We were
morning.
at Costco today too, but it
Really?
was after you. Yeah. We went after we ran and swam.
Oh, so
So
you
I was
went
there at
this
like
morning.
no, I was at like noon.
Yeah.
Were you there at noon?
Yeah.
I saw whatever, I can't say the name on here because if we leave this in the podcast, but I saw someone else that we know at Costco too, and I was like, wow,
They
like
probably saw me
everyone is
yelling at
here.
my kids.
So I did
Uh-huh.
not see you, but there were a million people there.
There were a
It
million
makes
people.
it makes my skin crawl. I was
Oh
like
my
with
God.
Aaron. I was like, how do we get out of here as fast as possible? I was like, what else do you need? What else do you need? Like, let's go. We gotta go.
That's how I was feeling, but like naturally, right? We get like just barely through the frozen food. We have snacks left. That's it. We just have to go through the middle part where there's snacks. And Keston's like, I gotta go potty. And I'm solo with both kids, right? One's too big to be in the cart, but little one's in the cart. And I'm trying to push through like thousands of people. Buddy is 3. So when he has to go to the bathroom, when he says I have to go to the bathroom, it's like, no, like right now. So I'm like, all I need is for you to like pee on the floor of Costco. That's all I need. So we like finally get like weave through all the people and get to the bathroom, whatever. And it was a lot of people, but they were asking for something. And I get to this point where if they've had good behavior, sometimes I'll do that. But the requirement is it needs to be like an outside toy or an active toy. So they both got kites.
It's good. It's a good day for it.
Yeah. Yeah. They both got
Yeah.
kites. So that will be fun. But yeah, to your point, I think it's like this get outside, go be barefoot in the grass, ground yourself, find a way to emotionally regulate instead of just shoving things down into a screen.
Mhm.
I think without all of this work, I don't know, I might be more apt to like throw a screen in front of my kid, you know? It's like
Yeah.
we need to be more aware. We need to spatial awareness now. That's a whole other thing. That's something we gotta work on. I'm like Keegan's like holding onto the side of the cart. There's like people like trying to get through and like this is awful. So eventually I just put him like in front of me and he's like pushing the cart and I'm over him pushing the cart. Keston
I think
almost broke
some
the bottle of wine that's sitting in like the kid section where he's sitting. Get me out of here. Costco.
it's better than Woodman's.
That's for sure. We got cotton candy
Er,
grape. It's a bright spot.
Cotton candy grapes.
Oh yeah, I'll bring you some. They're grapes, but they taste like cotton candy.
I'm skeptical.
They're just like regular grapes. They eat them like candy.
You like cotton candy? Yeah.
Like whatever, as long as it's a grape and not a gummy nerd cluster.
Yeah. My Costco find, and then we're gonna wrap on this because we're like way off topic.
If we've lost you by this point,
If we're so sorry. If you're still with us, thank you. But my Costco find was this like oat butter that apparently tastes like cookies.
I
It's
just
like
bought that today.
oatmeal.
I bought
Did
it
you?
today.
Yeah, I'd never seen it before, and
I'd
I was
never
like,
seen it
okay,
either.
curious.
I
But I
tried
was
it.
like, there's. Did you? Not
Yeah,
good. You
it's
don't like
really
it?
good. It's what I
Oh,
had
it
for
is
lunch.
good. For me, I like pick it up, and I was like, huh, oat butter. 15 grams of carbs per serving. How could I use this as triathlon fuel? That's what I thought. Yeah. Anyway, all right.
All
So
right.
if you've stuck with us through the additional stories that we're telling here at the end, we appreciate you. Thank you for sticking it out with us.
If you don't know
Like,
the Enneagram, ask us about our Costco finds.
yes. So if you'd like to be on and talk about your number, your tri-type, please reach out to us. We're going to have to go through growth and stress lines
Yeah.
in more detail. So we're going to cover that in an upcoming episode. Yeah, you can find us on all the socials. There's a TikTok. You might be watching this on YouTube. There's YouTube. There's an Instagram. We'd love to interact with you there. So please comment, subscribe, follow, like, share, all of that sort of stuff. Really, really helps the podcast if you are enjoying it and you're not totally annoyed when we go off topic. If you would share that with someone else that you think would enjoy the podcast, very, very helpful to us. If you would leave us a rating on Apple or Spotify, also super, super helpful. We really appreciate it. All right, what am I missing?
Until next time.
Until next time. Next time, I think we're going to try to record in person, right?
In person.
Yeah.
In Holly's
Yeah, we're going to shoot
studio.
for that. Yeah, we're gonna try. Let's fit that in. All right, cool.
All right.
I'll talk to you later, Tannah.
Bye.
Bye.